Good evening, Yorktown, and welcome to the Town Board meeting for Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. If you could all please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Diana will be leading us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Diana. And if we can all take a moment as we remember all of our first responders, all of our frontliners, all of our police, we can say a special...
Recording in progress.
This meeting is now being recorded. Thank you, Town Clerk. As we come down to the end of school, if we can keep our teachers in our thoughts and prayers and the students, and as always, have a moment of silence for those brave men and women protecting our freedoms overseas, those serving in the United States military.
Hey, Matt, if we could also remember those that were part of Operation Overlord and the Normandy invasions, as we're just a couple of days from that, past that. And, we recently lost a friend who actually stormed the beaches. So, it's really an amazing thing that they did for the greatest generation did for us. Let's remember that.
They did. Thank you. Yes, Councilman Lachterman. Okay. Again, welcome everyone to tonight's Town Board meeting. I'm Supervisor Matt Slater, joined by Councilman Tom Diana, Councilman Ed Lachterman, Councilwoman Alice Roker, and Councilman Vishnu Patel. We also have with us our Town Clerk, Diana Quast, and our Town Attorney, Adam Rodriguez. I just want to start with a big congratulations to Councilwoman Roker. Her daughter, Courtney, was married this weekend, and thankfully I had a moment to see her and her now husband, who is a fine gentleman. So, Councilwoman Roker, congratulations to you and Courtney and your whole family.
Oh, thank you. It was a wonderful wedding, and they're now in Mexico.
God bless.
Good for them, absolutely. Just great people. It was great to see Courtney. I haven't seen her in quite some time, and it was great to see her when she stopped by Town Hall here last week. Her and her now husband, Wes, so it's great.
Thank you.
Let's see. We do have a couple of proclamations that we wanted to recognize as we started this Town Board meeting. I know it's a bit unorthodox, but something that we wanted to recognize. We have a proclamation for Rabbi Seth Sternstein. Again, this is for the Yorktown Jewish Center. As everyone knows or may not know, the Yorktown Jewish Center is set to close later this month. It's been a staple of our community for a number of years. And we did want to recognize two individuals that the congregation had reached out to us about. First, again, Rabbi Seth Sternstein, and I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas a synagogue needs a rabbi who is thoroughly grounded in Jewish ritual and law, compassionate, approachable, and kind. Whereas Rabbi Seth Sternstein, a son of a rabbi, was born and grew up in Yonkers, New York, and earned a bachelor's degree at Baruch College and an MBA at Iona College. And whereas while studying to receive both a master's degree in rabbinic ordination at the Jewish Theological Seminary, Rabbi Seth Sternstein was the cantor at the Westchester Jewish Center in Mamaroneck, New York. And whereas he served as rabbi of the Old Westbury Hebrew Congregation and the Kings Park Jewish Center before becoming rabbi of the Yorktown Jewish Center in 2006. And whereas at the Yorktown Jewish Center, Rabbi Seth Sternstein started innovative programs in the congregation's religious school, prepared students for bar and bat mitzvah, and served as president of the Westchester County Board of Rabbis from 2016 to 2018. And whereas on June 30th, 2021, Rabbi Seth Sternstein, a loving husband to Marcia and a proud father and grandfather, completes his distinguished rabbinic career at the Yorktown Jewish Center. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Town Board, Town of Yorktown, do hereby offer our thanks, appreciation, and recognize the incredible accomplishments of Rabbi Seth Sternstein. Similarly, we have a proclamation for Roseanne Devine. and reads as follows. Whereas the person who answers an organization's telephone or greets strangers who come through the front door defines the expression that first impressions count. And whereas Roseanne Devine has been the person making positive first impressions count for newcomers who contact the Yorktown Jewish Center for 32 years, she has served as the administrative manager. And whereas Roseanne Devine computerized the synagogue's office, organized congregational records, handled financial maintenance, and created a monthly congregational newsletter. And whereas Roseanne Devine has been indispensable in the daily operations of the Yorktown Jewish Center, and whereas in her personal life, Roseanne Devine earned an associate's degree in theology at the International College of Bible Theology, initiated and leads women's conferences for the Vineyard Community Church in Hopewell Junction, New York, publishes the weekly online blog Barnabas Letter, and authored a book entitled Making the Leap from the Cross to the Resurrected Life. And whereas a loving wife to David and proud mother and grandmother, is set to retire on June 30th, 2021, after faithfully serving the Yorktown Jewish Center for more than 3 decades. And again, now therefore be it resolved that the town board members of Yorktown do hereby offer our thanks, appreciation, and recognize the great accomplishments of Roseanne Devine. And again, to both Rabbi Sternstein and Roseanne, thank you for your incredible contributions to the Yorktown community during your tenures. Roseanne for 32 years, Rabbi Sternstein, again, being a staple in this community for quite some time. And we will be sorely missed. Hopefully you don't go too far, but we did want to take time, and I do want to thank Marsha Stone for helping Town Hall write these proclamations and ensuring that we properly recognize these 2 great leaders within our community.
Truly mitzvahs to the community that they've done over the years. And actually, Rabbi Sternstein's father, I believe, was a rabbi for a short time at Lincoln Park Jewish Center.
Wow.
Back in 1977 or 78. So.
Excellent. Well, again, we wish them and their family well on their journey in the next chapter, and again, hope that they're not going too far, and we'll always have a special place here in the town of Yorktown that we will always be thankful for their service to our community.
Hey, Matt, just to dovetail on what you had said earlier about the schools, and they're going to be closing soon, and more kids are going to be out. Please remember that, folks, and drive carefully. You're going to have youngsters out on bicycles now and having a good time in the summer sun. So please beware of that. Drive carefully.
Thank you, Councilman. We are a little ahead of schedule, so we are going to, but we will, unless there's other comments from the town board, we'll go with our first presentation tonight. Happy to welcome Alan Cassay to do the audit presentation on the 2020 town financial audit.
When we gonna get the report?
I'm sorry, we did not take a motion on the information. If you'd like to do that,
Motion.
we have a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Councilman Patel, we'll send around the. I believe that there were, and we have our town comptroller with us, Pat Caparella. I believe we have copies, Pat, of the reports here at Town Hall.
Yeah, they were in each of the board members' mailboxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's also been posted online. So if you don't have a copy and you'd like to go online right now, it's on the Finance Department website.
Thank you, Miss Pat.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pat. And again, welcoming Alan from O'Connor Davies. Alan,
Hey, Alan.
again.
Good evening,
Hello,
everyone. Hello.
Good to see you.
And
I put together a PowerPoint, which I'm going to share with you
great.
Okay.
as soon as I could figure out. Where is it? Okay. There it is. Can everyone see that?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes. Okay. Basically, just to give you an overview, the audit went very well. The town is in good financial position, and I'm just going to go over some of the highlights of the financial statements. And with everything within this PowerPoint is in your hardbound copy of the financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Give you page references if you'd like to go over it. And obviously, if there are any questions along the way, please feel free. Okay. So tonight we're just going to go over, we'll look at the general fund, the 3-year retrospective of the fund balance, the general fund, which is the primary operating fund of the town. We'll look at a budget to actual summary overall, and then we'll look at the revenues, the expenditures, some of the other governmental funds, and everybody's always interested in GASB statement number 75, which is the other post-employment benefits. And last year, you implemented a new GASB statement number 84 called the custodial activities. Okay, so to begin with, our opinion based on the results of our audit was an unqualified opinion, which means that it's a clean opinion and it's the best opinion you could receive. And basically it says that the information within the financial statements are in compliance with auditing accounting principles, government accounting principles, and there were no major deficiencies. Okay. Okay, here is a look back, a 3-year look back at the general fund, the fund balance. The first category is the non-spendable fund balance, which consists of prepaid expenditures. Then you have your reserves, and you have one reserve for the employee benefit accrued liability. Basically, this is the compensated absences that the employees accrue while working. So you have a reserve set aside when somebody retires, and there's a payout, you have funds available. And that's about $880,000. It went up from the prior year from 756. Then you have your assigned fund balance, which the purchases on order are encumbrances, which are purchases that were made prior to the end of the year for which you haven't received the goods or services as of December 31st. In addition to that, you've appropriated $925,000 from the fund balance to balance the 2021 budget, okay, which you did the last year, and the year before that, it was $1,075,000. Then you have an assigned fund balance for tax certiorari's. These are claims that people file to have their taxes reduced. So you have certain money set aside in case there is a large influx of judgments that would affect the town. You have some money put aside for that, which is very good. Historically, the expenses in the last couple of years have averaged around $50,000, but there are a fair amount of claims outstanding. So it's good that you have this money set aside. So then you have your total assigned fund balance, which is $1,625,000. Then you have your unassigned fund balance. And basically, this is your rainy day fund of $20,028,000, increase from last year of almost $17 million. Now, you'll see the little asterisk on the bottom where it says it represents 63% of the appropriations. Keep in mind that this number, you can't always look at the percentage or the dollar amount. You have to look at them together, because if the town, which it has historically done in the last couple of years, use this money to fund capital projects as opposed to issuing debt, which I think is a very good idea, because not only does it save you the issuance costs up front, it also saves you the interest expense for the term of the bond that you issue. Okay, so you have this money available. And in reality, I mean, $20 million is certainly a lot of money. But if you had a major project, that undertaking, any of these infrastructure projects, that could whittle that $20 million away in no time at all. Okay, so that's why I said you're in a good financial position if in case you did need to use that money for an infrastructure project or something to that effect, you have the availability to do it without bonding. Okay, this is the general fund budget to actual summary. The details for this particular page are on page 61 of the financial statements. You have your original budget, the final budget, the actual, and then the variance with the final budget. So the original budget and the final budget for the revenues were the same, $28,307,000. The actual came in at $28,556,000, generating a positive budgetary variance of $248,000. On the expenditure side, the final budget went up slightly, about $100,000, and the actual came in at $26,032,000, which generated a positive budgetary variance of $4.7 million. Okay, now there's a lot of reasons for both of these things. Primarily, COVID had a lot to do with it, but also the fact that the board and the controller really keeps a tight watch on the department heads and controls their spending and so forth. You're able to control your expenditures because as I've said in previous years and basically everywhere where I present, you have to keep in mind that your revenues, for the most part, aside from your property taxes, you have no control over, okay? The expenditure side of the budget or the appropriations is where you can control the spending, okay, which is what you did in this particular year. So the third number down, the excess of revenues over expenditures in the actual column is a positive 2.5 million. Then you have your other financing sources and uses, and the details for that is on page 65 for the transfers in and on page 68 for the transfers out. Okay, and that nets to a positive 821,000. Then you have your net change in fund balance under the actual column. The third number up from the bottom was a positive $3.3 million. Now, keep in mind, I'll probably say this more than once, but the last couple of years, you had a licensing agreement with Spectra, which you didn't budget for, which was a smart thing because basically we consider that a one-shot revenue because the revenue is going to come in. In your particular case, I think it lasted about 3 years. And it generated, last year was 3.5 million. But this year, there was no Spectra licensing monies available, and it was still, despite COVID, able to generate a surplus of 3.3 million. Okay? And then you add that 3.3 to the fund balance at the beginning of the year, the 19,837,000. So your total fund balance at the end of the year is 23,183,000. Okay. Let me turn the page. Okay. Now these are some of the revenues, the original budget, the final budget, and the actual. This is the details. And this begins on page 63 and runs through 65. This page here is a roll-up of 63 to 65. There's more details there. But for presentation purposes, I think we can get a pretty good idea of what's going on here. So your real property taxes, they went down by 605,000. You reduced the levy basically, and that's about 4.5%. Okay. That also has to do with the appropriated fund balance of 925,000. You were able to do that and reduce the actual levy in the general fund. The sales tax, which is in the non-property taxes, went up by 877,000. And part of the reason for that is the Westchester County increased their sales tax rate by 1% at the end of 2019. So it carried over into 2020. And despite COVID, it was still able to have an increase of almost 900,000 in your sales tax. One reason being is because you budgeted conservatively, which is the smart thing to do. The departmental income had a negative variance of 1.2 million. And this was directly related to COVID. The park and rec fees were down a little over $1 million. Okay, so for basically 3-4 months, there was no activity in any of these areas. The building permits, again, I think directly related to COVID because all building pretty much came to a halt for that time period, was down about close to $400,000. The fines and forfeited bail, again, COVID related because the courts were closed, and that was down 81%. On the positive side of COVID, everybody was leaving Manhattan and moving to the suburbs to get away because everybody was working remotely and they realized they don't have to be in New York City to do it. So the real estate market in all of Westchester and the surrounding suburbs was really very hot during this time period or soon after COVID, became a reality. So your mortgage tax was up 252,000. And then the miscellaneous was down 3.7, primarily because of the Spectra agreement. Last year, as I said, it generated 3.5 million. Okay. Then you have the budget to actual expenditures. And again, you had some positive variances. The general government support had a positive variance of $1.8 million, and that was spread through all the categories. If you look on pages 66 through 68 of the report, you'll see all the various functions under general government support, and you'll notice that there's not one particular function where there was a huge variance. It was spread pretty evenly throughout. The public safety, the police department, had a positive variance of 585,000, and that's an increase of about 2.2% in the overall expenditure. The culture and rec had a positive variance of 1.2 million, but the actual expense is down about 870,000. Okay, and that's clearly related to the Park and Rec departmental income revenues. The expenditures were correspondingly down, and that was down about $870,000. The employee benefits had a positive variance of 747,000, and overall the expenditure for all of the categories within the employee benefits is pretty comparable to the prior year, and there were no major significant increases in either the retirement or the health benefits or the costs. Overall, it was up about $285,000 or 6%. So on the expenditure side, the total expenditures were down about 4.1 million. Some of it was related to COVID, and some of it was related to the actions of the board and the finance department and controlling the department heads, which is, again, the area where you can control your budget. So that's down 4.1 million, about 15%. And the transfer out to the capital projects was down 1.9 million in the current year. And that all contributed to the net change in fund balance, which is a positive $3,345,000. Any questions?
Where is the money, for open space parked in here?
It's in the general fund.
Yeah, okay. So it can be used for anything then other than open space?
No, open space, it's restricted for open space. Okay.
Hey, Alan, you had mentioned that the fines and forfeitures were down based on COVID. Do you think that some of the new bail reform has an effect there? That's something we have to look going forward?
It probably did. You're absolutely right. I believe that the majority of your revenue comes from the fines and not so much the bail, because the bail is usually returned once it's resolved. Okay, so most revenue is coming from fines within the town.
Were the fines addressed though in that bail reform? I think some of the penalties were also addressed.
Some of the penalties may have been, but overall, I don't think it'll have a major impact. And fortunately, the town and the board, they've always budgeted conservatively. So you're aware of this, and I'm sure your 2021 budget reflects that. Okay, and if you look at the details in the report, I think, let me just turn to that for that particular area. That would be on, where would that be? Okay, that would be on the middle of page 64. You budgeted 425,000, and last year the actual revenue was 420,000. Okay, or 491,000. It was 500,000. So you were well within your budget last year, and because when you adopted your 2020 budget, nobody knew that COVID was going to, affect us. So the actual revenue came in at 270,000, and that was short 154,000 from the budget. Okay.
Alan, in that regard, though, if for the fines, a large portion of that was because the courts were closed. So in theory, then you should be picking that up on the back end.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now that they're up and running.
Right. I mean, the courts were probably closed from probably middle of March through June or July.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, you're talking 4 months, a quarter of the year, third of the year, it was closed, and that's, pretty close to the revenue shortfall.
Right. And I know our judges are working very hard to catch up with their calendars now. So in
Right.
theory, then we should see more revenue in 21 because of the backlog that they're catching up on.
Exactly.
Alan O'Connor Davies does a number of communities in Westchester. How
Yes.
did Yorktown compare?
Overall, you're probably of the top, the ones that I do, I would say you're towards the top in terms of your financial health.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alan, can I ask something, whether it's appropriate to, where would it be, like back taxes, in a range of less than 5 million something, you don't keep a track of that thing where it is now, if anything came and it is parked somewhere else, right?
Could you repeat that, Vishnu?
The back taxes, over the year, it's a very large amount of money, 5 million, something like that.
Right. We do a calculation for any uncollected taxes. When we look at the property taxes, there's a calculation that we do. Any taxes collected within 60 days of year end are included in the revenue. Anything beyond that there's an allowance for. So
Yes.
when we have Pat provides us with a schedule of all the uncollected taxes by year, and depending upon the percentage and how many years out they go, each year has their own, dollar amount. We take a reserve against it.
Mm.
That's been reflected in the revenue.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pat, how did we do in taxes?
In taxes, you did fairly well. I mean, your budget was 13,475,000, and your actual was 13,087,000. So that's a
Excellent.
collection rate.
Yeah, we saw that we heard that from our tax receiver, Barbara Corsack, in the tax department, that the rate was well into the 90%, which we didn't know what to expect with COVID.
Right.
Right.
That's why we worked with the county and the state to provide some relief for those, because we didn't know who was going to be impacted by COVID, because when it was at its peak, it was right when the taxes were due in May. And so, despite the fact that we were able to provide some relief and help for those who have been impacted financially by COVID during that tax period, we still saw a phenomenal return rate on tax payments.
And I will say the collection rate is very good.
Is that something that you saw in other communities as well?
Pretty much, yes. Maybe not as high as yours, but they were all showed a slight increase.
Alan, any comment you can make it, last 5 years, the assessment increase or flat, or, some kind of a guessing answer?
Well, the assessment probably goes up every year, and based upon the transition from people going from Manhattan to Westchester and the surrounding suburbs, my understanding is that whenever a house is placed on the market, it doesn't last very long, and there's usually a bidding war. So if each community does an annual assessment or evaluation, I imagine that number will go up quite drastically next year. But again, it's a combination of the assessed value and the tax rate. So that's basically what determines your levy.
You can, it's not just somebody tell you, fortune teller, that it's going to go up. It's just a bouncing ball. Am I right?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's nothing that you could look at that's going to predict which way it's going to go. I mean, there are several factors that influence it, and one of them is the home values, the sales, and that's certainly based upon the real estate market in the past 9 months. From my understanding is, because I know a few people who are real estate brokers, there's bidding wars on pretty much every property that goes on the market because everybody wants to get out of New York City. Maybe that'll slow down a bit, most likely will. But for the time being, the real estate market is good and all the municipalities are benefiting from it.
But the central bank interest rates, that could have a negative impact, right?
Well, as I said, there are several factors that will determine that. The mortgage interest rates is certainly one of them. My understanding is the rates may be going up, which may may cause a little bit of a slowdown.
Right.
I still think they're at pretty much close to historical lows. So anybody who is thinking of buying a home, I don't know that the slight increase in the interest rates will deter that. So I think the market is still strong.
I think we owe a certain debt to our iron fist comptroller
Without a doubt.
who keeps us in check and really provides the department heads with guidance, as she did me when I was town clerk. Want to thank her.
Yes. Well, as I said at the beginning, the audit went very well. Pat was very well prepared, provided us with all the information we needed. Anything that obviously, while we're doing the audit, we always have questions, and based upon what we're looking at, we may have additional questions, require additional information. We received everything right on the spot. And as I said, the audit went very well. So,
Can I ask one question, last one from me? This audit, what you represented is last year's December 31st, and there is no other payment due in that last year's budget. So this is just the final number?
these are the final numbers for the December 31st, 2020, yes.
So if something is coming up, then how will it be reported? Current 21 budget, or it just remains the same number for 2020, December 31st?
In terms of the budget?
Yeah.
Well, you adopted your 2021 budget already. That's in place. You're living with it now.
No, what I mean is the total expenses you reported today was December 31st, 2020.
Right.
And if anything more come up from whatever reason, that number will change it. It will go up or maybe down, mostly it will go up. Unpaid bill or
encumbered.
something.
Well, the expenditures as of 12/31/2020, whether they go up or down, will depend upon, I can't even begin to think of how many factors. The economy, next winter, there's so many different factors, but the fact is that, as Councilwoman Roker had said, Pat does have a good line of communication with all the department heads, and nobody could overexpend their budget.
Right.
Wanted to purchase something, and for a vehicle or whatever, for $30,000, there's only $20,000 left in their budget. They're not able to do it unless the board decides to appropriate funds from a different line item.
Right.
You can't overexpend your budget. It's against New York state law, okay, without appropriating fund balance. So if you have a line item, every department head has to stay within that budget unless the board takes action otherwise.
And even, Vishnu, if you didn't get a bill by the end of December, generally that's money that Pat encumbers in her in the document.
Right. There are certain, you have your accounts payable, and then you have your accrued liabilities, and those are all expenses that are recorded as of December 31st, 2020, for which you haven't paid the cash, but it is in the expenditure number. Okay. So that number encompasses all the expenses affecting 2020. Mm-hmm. Okay.
You have a few months to, reconciliation of all the numbers, what was the budget and when the bill came and all that. And that's why, it takes a little while to figure out how much is really the numbers, what are the real actual number for 2020. So thank you.
Well, what we do, part of the audit, Vishnu, is we do what's called a subsequent disbursement test, where based on a calculation of materiality, we look at all the disbursements made subsequent to year end to see which year they're applicable to. If they're applicable to 2020 and the bill just came in, for argument's sake, after we got the information and the trial balances from Pat, then we would, Pat would prepare an entry to accrue that amount. If the expenses are for 2021, there's nothing to be done. So we do look at expenses that do come in or invoices that do come in and disbursements subsequent to 12/31/20. Okay, we go out through the date of our field work, which I think was at the end of March, beginning of April. So anything that didn't come in within the first 3-4 months of 21, I don't think you're going to have very much, if any, coming in that's going to affect 2020 at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. On the next slide, I just put together the other governmental funds. You have your highway fund, the special districts fund, the capital projects fund, and what's considered non-major governmental funds. You could see the third number up from the bottom, the net change in fund balance. All the other governmental funds had a positive surplus in the current year. Highway was up 506,000. All the special districts combined were up 210,000. Capital 85,000, and the non-major governmental funds, which are the 4 funds listed right below that, were up about 628,000 combined. And then off to the left, you'll notice the special districts funds. Each one of them has a positive fund balance, as all your governmental funds do. Okay? So as I said, the general fund is in a good financial position, as are all your other governmental funds. Okay, and then Gatsby's statement number 75, the other post-employment benefits. Basically, these are all the benefits that the employees are earning or accruing for their health benefits when they retire. At the end of the year, the liability was $93 million. That is an actuarially determined number based on the census of the town and various actuary tables.
I'm sorry, Alan, can you click on slide 9? I think you're still on slide 8.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
No worries. There we go.
There we go. You're welcome. So that liability is going to be paid out over 30 years. What you pay every year is just the retiree's health benefits, which are in your health expense. And that number may fluctuate a little because every year the actuaries do take the most current census data provided to them by the town. They do a full actuarial analysis every 2 years. So that number will go up. But this number does not affect your budgeting. It does not affect anything else. It's primarily informational, and basically it's part of the Government Accounting Standards Statement number 34, where you take all your governmental funds, which are reported on a modified accrual basis, and convert it to the full accrual basis, and therefore this liability is included on the full accrual. Okay, so for the most part, it's informational. And everybody looks at the financial statements and sees it and always panics and say $93 million. It's not going to affect the town. Every year you're paying your retirees' health benefits, which are going up primarily because people are living longer is one reason, and the cost of health insurance goes up every year. But again, your financial position is sound enough you could absorb it without any major issues. Okay. I said last year we also implemented another GASB statement number 84, the fiduciary activities. Basically, it took all the accounts that were in the agency fund, which were deposits payable and payroll withholding And that all is in the general fund now. The only thing that's in the used to be the agency fund is now referred to as the custodial fund, are basically taxes collected for other governments. You collect taxes for the county and the schools, and you make them whole throughout the year. The county you make whole prior to the end of the year, I believe, and the schools in April. So that's all that's in that fund. Basically, you're a conduit. You're a pass-through and a collection agency for the other governments. And GASB felt that that should be broken out, and that's the only thing that should be in the custodial fund, which is basically what's all you have in there in the current year. Okay, just again to summarize, we issued an unmodified opinion, a clean opinion. We also issued a report to those charged with governance, also commonly referred to as the management letter. There were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies noted, which means that your controls are in place, and not only are they in place, they're being followed. Okay, there are a few minor control deficiencies, nothing of major importance. And as I said, GASB 84 you implemented last year. There was another GASB statement number 87 regarding leases, which won't be a major impact for the town. That was supposed to be implemented in 2020, but because of COVID, it was pushed off to 2022. Okay, and that's basically it. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question. Historically lowest interest rate to finance something, to some project. And we have a good fund balance. So which is really wise things to do now? Use the fund balance or borrow?
Well, let's put it this way. The borrowing rates on bands, bond anticipation notes, short-term borrowings, is generally less than they are for long-term bonds. I just want to see what your rates are. Currently, you have 2 short-term capital borrowings outstanding. The interest rate on one is 0.89%, and this information is on page 41 of the report. And then you have another band outstanding, and the interest on that is 1.64%. And those were issued several years ago, 2008, 2015. I don't know what the current interest rates on the short-term borrowings are, but I think you have a financial advisor.
We do.
And I'm sure they would be best to advise you based upon the interest rates, because you have to remember, whenever you issue debt, whether it's a bond or a band, there are issuance costs, and they could run into several $1,000s. Okay? So even though the interest rates are low, obviously it's a board decision. You have to weigh your options and see what the financial advisor recommends. They're better suited to, because they have more information on what the market will bear in terms of interest rates and what it'll cost the town, A, to issue it, and then to pay it off over the number of years. So I think you need to consult with your financial advisor.
So if somebody asks me, how come town is not doing this? You have this much money. What should I tell them?
That's a decision. I don't know what
the answer is. I think he should answer it, right?
Well, it depends. Obviously, it depends what they're referring to, and something that the board would have to address. I couldn't provide that answer for you.
No, I mean, people always say, hey, we are paying taxes. Why something is wrong like that? So if you have a wisdom to, share your advice.
Well, those are board decisions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alan.
You're very welcome.
You also pay the taxes, okay? So,
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Alan, thank you so much. This is we really appreciate your time and effort in this. I do want to thank Pat Caparel, our comptroller, and the entire finance team.
Iron fist.
Iron fist. That's right. No doubt about that. But no, I think this really shows that we handled the pandemic and the financing of the pandemic really well, and we made the right decisions, and it put us in a very advantageous position, a very strong position moving forward. And that was really a team effort led by, again, our finance department, but in conjunction with our department heads who understood that
Yeah.
we were sailing the ship in uncharted territory that we had no idea what to expect. And so we hoped for the best, but we planned for the worst. And thankfully, according to this report, even though we planned for the worst, we got the best because the finances are really strong.
And it couldn't have been done without the board, so don't sell yourself short. The board was a big factor in all that transpired. So you set the policies, everybody else carries them out.
I
Thanks,
appreciate
Alan.
it. Yes.
Thank you, Alan.
You're very welcome.
Alan, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Have
You're
a
welcome.
great night, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
Pat.
Pat, thank you.
Francis.
You're welcome.
Good job, Pat.
Thank you.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good night, all.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to continue with our agenda tonight. We're going to invite Joe Rena to join us from Site Design Consultants to speak to the board about a slip and tree permit at 1039 Underhill Avenue.
Yeah, I think Alan's got to sign off.
Oh, yep. Alan, you there? Alan's got to stop sharing his screen.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
I mean, unless you want to leave the good screen up, that'd be great. I mean, we can do that up all night.
Okay, thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I see we have Mr. Rena. I saw we had John Tegeter, our Director of Planning, who popped on there for a second. Joe, you want to walk us through this application?
Sure. If I could share the screen.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Joe.
Joe.
So the applicant here and the property owner is Besim Ladki. The address is 1039 Underhill Avenue. It's the last driveway on the left as you're leaving town before the Taconic Parkway. So here's the off-ramp and the on-ramp to the Taconic Parkway. Here is the driveway. There's an existing house on the property now. It's a 4-bedroom house. His family owned the 2 properties to the east. And what Besim is looking to do is to expand the house to fit his family. He's got 4 daughters that are under 10. And right now they're living with his mom, and they need to get this going. So the condition, you basically saw the existing conditions. I'll show you the survey. We're in the currently the lot line is here. We're in the process of, and we've already submitted a map to Kim, the assessor, for a lot line change. We have to make a modification to it, and we're going to be resubmitting it to her. So the lot is actually going to be more the size of what I'm going to show you in the proposed aspect of it.
Okay.
So the driveway comes in off of here. It crosses the stream, which runs along parallel to the Underhill Avenue. There's like a bridge culvert here. You continue in, it's gravel. This is asphalt here, and this is the existing house and deck area in the back here. Under the proposed condition, the driveway is staying where it is. At a future date, he would like to take a look at improving the approach of the driveway, which we're going to hold that off to a later date because that's that becomes complicated and involves DPDC and everyone else, and he really wants to get his house going here.
Okay.
This is the proposed outline of the house. If you can follow my cursor, this is the existing outline of the house here. So he's reducing a little bit in the back, and he's adding along the front and on the right side here, formalizing the driveway. There's some grading that's going to take place to make it a little more usable around the house. There are no trees in the area that he's looking to do that grading. We're proposing for stormwater management here. We're proposing a rain garden off the driveway here, which will take the roof runoff from the additional impervious area. Here's the existing septic system is in the back here, and the existing well is this location right here. And we're in for a MS4 permit because of the volume of excavation that we're over the 50 yards, and that's it. That's what we're trying to do.
And no trees coming down or anything, right, Joe?
3.
No, there's nothing around the house that needs to come down.
All right, so it's
Okay.
just, I don't know why it's labeled as tree. So it's just the MS4 permit then.
Yes.
Joe, I remember when the house went up. Yeah, it came to my office as clerk. It looks like a straightforward permit.
Yeah. Say we just move on it?
Dan, no. Dan, can you walk us through? Dan, are you on?
We can get him on.
Okay, get
In the meantime, Joe, could you explain the lot line adjustment? And I'm sorry if I stepped on Dan there. He can go ahead if he's.
Is he on? I didn't know if he was on.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Oh,
Yeah, it's one of these things that exceeds the threshold for an administrative permit,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore it's put on to the town board for their review. Other than that, I don't think there's anything, as Joe said, we're kind of putting off the trickier part of the application of dealing with the
Driveway.
bridge over that water course. But for now, I don't have really any issues with what's proposed.
I don't understand lot line changes, John. So can you explain what has to happen?
Well, I'm not sure. I'd like if Joe could explain what they're proposing, and then I can give you. If you don't understand, if there's anything further you don't understand, I can try to clarify it further.
Okay.
So this is the existing lot line that's on the tax map now.
Right.
This is his brother's lot, which reaches in behind it. So essentially, what they're doing is adding to Bessem's lot, to the back of Bessem's lot, which ultimately will go from looking like this to looking like this. So right now, the lot does not meet the current 5-acre zone requirement, the 200,000 square feet. This will bring it up to the proper square footage. It's not a necessity for the proposed addition because we're not increasing the nonconformity to the setback, but it clearly makes it more conforming. As you can see, there's an issue where the septic is.
Yeah.
Septic goes over the line, so that brings that into conformity also. So that, as I said, we have a plat into Kim, and she's asked us to clarify some information. So we're getting the surveyor to do that, and we believe that'll be all taken care of or straightforward at this point.
So you're going.
Go, John.
Yeah, you're going through your standard lot line adjustment process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Or does the board want to refer this out?
Yeah.
So then we'll refer it out to necessary agencies and work with the clerk to set the public hearing and bring it back.
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Joe, we'll get this out.
Thanks very much, everyone.
It was
Got
an early hour, Joe.
What's that?
Usually you're with us later in the night, so it's early for you.
That's okay. I don't mind. All right.
For your evening.
Thanks, Joe.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back to where we're a little ahead of time again, but that's not a bad thing. We've got our planning department joining us. We've got John Tegeter, and we are welcoming Frank Fish of BFJ Planning. I'm not sure if Jim Glathar is on as well.
He should be on, and
Yep,
there he is.
With a new haircut. Looking fresh there, Jim. Frank, how are you?
I'm good, Matt.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Jim, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Hey,
Appreciate
Jim.
it.
Hi, everyone.
All right, John Tegeter, this is a continuation of the overlay district project that we're still pursuing. Do you want to just give us give the board and the public just an update as to where we are, and we can turn it over to Frank to discuss some of the environmental studies that we may be engaging in?
Yeah, sure. Well, the law has been referred out, and we referred it out with a standard EAF. And we have been talking about conducting additional studies to make sure that the town board is aware of and fully knowledgeable of what the impacts of the overlay district can be, tangible impacts related to traffic and school children and environment, all of the things that we are familiar with that we see in environmental studies. So I had been doing some research along those lines, and I also know through experience and traveling in planning circles some of the work that Frank has been doing with similar efforts in towns around us in both Westchester and nearby. So I reached out to Frank to discuss the potential of him working with us to conduct some of those studies. And the last time I spoke to you, I think it might have been during or just prior to when we did the last PowerPoint, we did discuss how to go forward with this. And so this is an expansion and an extension of that discussion right where we left off. So with that, I'll turn it over to Frank.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all for this time. And I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm Frank Fish. I'm a principal of BFJ Planning. We do and have done over, I guess, the last 35 years, quite a bit of work in Westchester County particularly, but in the whole metropolitan area. And one of the things we have focused on is overlay districts. We've written a number of these, which I think John just mentioned he's familiar with. We've written them in both villages, small villages like Village of Mamaroneck, some towns like the town of Mamaroneck, but also cities, New Rochelle for one. And we're working on a couple of overlays now. One is up for a vote in Ossining, which will be, I think, the 16th of this month. We finished their plan, and following it up is this overlay district, which is an opt-in district. So it's very similar in many ways. Densities are different, but it's similar to what I had a chance to read. John gave me a draft of your overlay district, and then also in talking to John and Jim and as your attorney, also sent to me some suggestions he made for amendments to it. So I think I have some grasp of it, and what it seems to me is it does allow the town board to make a decision as to whether they accept an application within that district, and within that district, then an applicant's going to get some flexibility, both in the Yorktown Heights district and the Lake district, in terms of design guidelines, in terms of the strict adherence to the underlying zoning, and height for instance, of 3 stories in Osceola Lake, and differences also in Yorktown. But Yorktown Heights, and I would agree with John, is mostly it's not a tabula rasa. It's not a lot of new development. It's going to be mostly redevelopment of the areas. So with that in mind, I do think that you could proceed on the basis of an environmental assessment form, an EAF, for these overlays, because it seems to me these overlays we can do with attachments to the EAF, both traffic, and I understand you will be using Nanette Bourne who does a lot of the traffic work in town, and I noticed that in your agenda earlier tonight. And also, we do a lot of overall environmental assessments, such as school children. We find that 2 of the big issues tend to be traffic and school children, and we've done a lot of that analysis of school districts. I know you have 2 school districts involved. So I think an environmental assessment form where someone's opting in to it at their choice, the town board could then, if there's a particular question on someone opting in, they're still responsible for their own site-specific analysis. So they're not going to be excused from that. So I think on that basis, we could do an environmental assessment form for both of these overlay districts, or separate forms, one for each, depending on how that's determined. And by doing that, again, you will be getting enough information, I feel, to make a reasonable decision and take a hard look at those at first, the zoning. And I think that would allow you, hopefully, to make a negative declaration on adoption of the zoning. And then you'd be in a position to accept applications. But when you do accept an application, then that developer then has to take a site-specific look at their development. So by doing an EAF up front on the zoning, you're not excusing the developer, down the road from doing a site-specific analysis. So I think that's a way to be able to move forward. As you all know, I'm sure, with an EAF, you can do it within some communities we do EAFs in. It only takes 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Some that are more complicated may take just a little longer, but you're not getting into generic EIS, which we've never been able to do that in less than 8 months. It's just the State Environmental Quality Review Act just requires so many steps for it that it's basically a year-long process. And I think it's not necessary where you have this type of approach. You're doing an overlay zone, there's opt-in procedures here. You're looking at overall what the zone is like, but you're still going to get site-specific EAS as developers come in. So I think that's a good, I think what you're contemplating is a good approach. We've done that approach in other communities near you, and we've done environmental assessment forms, usually with appendices, like school children, and Nanette would do an appendix for traffic. But I think those things would be possible and be done in a fairly, for me, fairly short would be 2 or 3 months. And then the budget is also much more modest to do an EAF with attachments. So that's, with that, I think maybe I'll turn it back to the supervisor for.
Well, I'm glad you said 3 times, and I'm going to say it for a 4th, that there will be site-specific analysis done for each proposal that wants to opt in.
Right.
There's been questions about that since we've started this journey in this process. So maybe the 4 times that we've said it tonight will hopefully reemphasize and reassure people that in addition to the study that we're going to do as a town board on again, the generic overlay district and the potential impact that it has, that each, I'm going to say this will be the 5th time now, that each specific proposal that wants to utilize an overlay district will have to do additional studies.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure.
I have a question. Did we hire an environmental consultant who is going to take that first look for us?
We did not perform the interviews. We were scheduled to do that this week. but because of scheduling conflicts, we're going to have to do it next week.
Okay, because we're going to need that person as well.
Yes, for the environmental consultant. So we're planning on doing those next week. I believe when I spoke with Mr. Fish last week, the cost associated is going to in our procurement policy is going to require an RFP. So we're going to have to go ahead, and that's really the first step for the board is to authorize the town attorney and the town clerk to issue an RFP to get this rolling here. But I think that we put a lot of time and energy and sweat equity into this, and as you heard Mr. Fish say earlier, there's communities all across the region who are now jumping into this realm of overlay districts. So we want to make sure that we're competing.
I think this is really the last thing we needed to do before we come out. And I know, Jim, have you given us some amendments to the law?
I have provided them to John and to Adam and also to Frank and the supervisor. I have not shared them with the board yet. I will wait for feedback from Adam, John, Frank, and the supervisor, and then any revisions that they recommend that I agree with, I will forward to the board.
One of the tasks for this week, right, guys? Is to provide Jim some feedback on his.
Right. Yeah.
All right, I'm glad. Mr. Fish, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So then we'll want to make a motion to instruct the town attorney to craft the RFP and we can get it out ASAP.
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Okay.
Mr. Rodriguez, no work on Friday now, other than you know what.
I was waiting for it.
Ask another question here. Who is going to pay for this one?
I'm sorry?
This environment EAF, who will be paying? The town, or who is initiating this?
Yeah, the town will be paying for the expanded EAF that we're going to put the RFP out for to study the overlay district as it's proposed for both the Heights and Osceola, and then the individual applicants when they do come in to opt into or apply for the overlay district designation, we'll have to do site-specific studies on top of that.
Correct.
Because, right now, the overlay district is not approved by the town board.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Right.
So, let's not confuse the people, those who are listening,
No one ever said that it was approved by the town board. This is us doing, as a town board, our due diligence to make sure that we study every aspect of this and have a full understanding and knowledge base as to any and all impacts it could have on the direct part of town that we're working on, whether that's up here, whether that's up in Osceola. And Councilman Diana, Councilman Lachterman, and Highway Superintendent Paganelli and I walked East Main Street up in Osceola on Friday. And all I kept thinking about was, this is what this area needs is this overlay district to start spurring some redevelopment and reinvestment. Because we were looking at, as we heard Councilman Patel, as we heard on Tuesday's town board meeting, we had a resident come and talk about East Main Street in Jefferson Valley and her concerns over the traffic and sight lines and that all is going to take a lot of energy, but also a lot of reinvestment to improve that corridor. So the idea again is that these overlay districts will provide the incentives to spur that reinvestment and redevelopment. So this is our as a town board doing our due diligence to make sure that we have a full understanding of the potential impacts we'll have either in Osceola or down in the Heights as it's proposed. Not capped, proposed.
I think Vishnu, this is really what the residents have been asking us to do in terms of understanding what impacts might come about as a result of the overlay district. And just so that you remember that when you did the comp plan, this was done for the comp plan as well.
Didn't someone bring up the point that this should have been done regardless out of the audience?
Yeah, we're doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So not only been asked for, but pointed out that it's, I believe, a part of the process that should have been
Yeah, it's a requirement.
required. Yep.
You know, it's unfortunate that a lot of fake information got out there prior to us even getting through to this process. And that's what has caused a lot of the problems to date.
Well, we'll move this process forward with the expanded EAF. Mr. Rodriguez will work on the RFP with our town clerk. We'll get it out. And Mr. Fish, we're looking forward to hopefully working with you and benefiting from your expertise and your experience in this realm.
Can I just thank John Tegeter?
No, don't thank him.
John has guided us every step of the way, and I just want to acknowledge that we appreciate your guidance as we move forward.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
It's been great. And again, Adam Rodriguez and Jim Glathar from our legal team, they've been extremely helpful as well. So it's been a real collaborative effort because we want to make sure that it's the best piece of legislation that we can come up with for our town and make sure that it accomplishes what we want, but also it has those safeguards in place that we've continued to discuss and explore and make sure that we understand, again, its true impact. And so that's our next step in this process. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Good night now.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, and we are speeding right along here. We got Dan Ciarcia, our engineering consultant, with us, acting town engineer, depending on the day and the title. Right, Dan?
Whatever you need me for.
Well, listen, we appreciate your help and guidance here. You want to provide us an update on some of the ongoing infrastructure projects here in town? I see that we've got some guests with us as well. We've got Pete McDermott from WSP, who's been involved with the Culver projects. Vanessa, who's been involved with the fluoride projects. It's great to see you both. And we have Nicole as well. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you.
Yes, good to see you. I had to change my screen name from my son's name, but now we are here.
Well, you got it correct.
Excellent. All right, Dan, take it away.
All right. Well, as you guys are aware, the two big projects we have going at the moment are the Hill Boulevard culvert and our new fluoridation facility. So we're coming in the home stretch on both of those. But as the board is aware, there are some hiccups we experienced in terms of what it's taken to complete the job. So we have our consultants here, and I guess I really defer to them about where we are schedule-wise and where we are budget-wise. So I don't know if you guys drew straws to see who goes first, but
some virtual rock, paper, scissors.
Go first, Dan.
Way of doing it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter McDermott.
Good evening.
I am the resident engineer for the project. I work for WSP USA, the design consultant. I'm in charge of the daily inspection on the project and the project administration. And this project was the replacement of two culverts, one at Veterans Road, which is 98% completed. What we have to do is to finish paving and the striping at Veterans Road. Currently, we are reconstructing the Hill Boulevard culvert. We have about 6 weeks left. And I'd like to say that the relationships that have been built on this project between the town, WSP, Nicole and myself, and our contractor, Transit Construction out of Yonkers, has been strong. We have a contractor that cares, that knows culvert construction, has a strong experience, has been able to construct both of these culverts in difficult weather conditions and other conditions that we've experienced on the project. They know what they're doing, and they want to build something that the town is going to be proud of. And that cooperation that all three of us have made is why this is going to be a successful project. I would think that some of you have seen the result of Veterans Road, the culvert, the surrounding area, how it's been landscaped. We really did a nice job there, and we're going to do just as good a job at Hill Boulevard as well. You know, we've had a few things that we had to tackle at Hill, a lot of utilities, Verizon stuff, issues with Con Edison, and with the cooperation of all the parties, we've been able to keep this project moving. And like I say, we're going to be completed in about 6 weeks. The initial construction cost for both culverts is approximately $3 million. And tonight, we're here to discuss the additional funding that is required to complete the project. 3 weeks ago, I provided documentation to the town engineer, who I believe has gone over it with Matt Slater. I don't know if he shared that information with the board members, but we're willing to discuss those issues tonight. Roughly, we required an additional $422,000. The basis of that money is the items of work where the quantities overran what was originally estimated, you know, by the engineer. And so we're here tonight to discuss with the town why it happened or how it happened, and please ask us any questions that you'd like. Now, can you hear me?
No, we can hear you.
That was a silence. And I will say too, I mean, and I think you must be aware of this, like, you know, the total funding that the town got out of both of these two projects was, you know, 3.3 million, you know, so I feel like, you know, that's something to be happy about. I mean, granted, you know, 422,000 is not nothing, but the $3 million that we did get through the Bridge New York program is nothing to sneeze at either. So, you know, just to put a happy face on some of this, you know, I would like to just remind everyone about that piece as well.
So
can you tell us about it?
You want to explain what happened? I mean,
yeah.
The quantity overrun by the engineer. I guess what engineer, you know, you want to provide some information on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, look, between both culverts, there's about 70 work items in the project. And early into the job, around December, the contractor came to me and identified 2 current items that they had figured were going to overrun the engineer's estimate. So let me just back up. We did the work that was identified on the contract plans, structure excavation on classified excavation. We didn't exceed the limits or the pay limits that are shown on the contract plans. So there are roughly a dozen items that were identified by the contractor after a few months, because when he brought this up to me about Veterans Road, I said, look, I don't want to go to the town until we know where the overruns are on Veterans Road and where the projections are on Hill Boulevard. And that took a little while to do, but we all got together, WSP and Transit Construction. They provided us, you know, with information, with quantities, with calculations for each of these respective items. I reviewed them. Nicole and her team, the designers, they reviewed them. And by the end of March, we agreed to the quantities, the estimated final quantities, and then the negotiations took place between my office and the contractor in terms of how we negotiate unit prices for these particular items. Now, we followed the New York State Department of Transportation specifications for this project. There's a section 109 that identifies how you go about handling overrun on specific items. We did that. The negotiations took a little bit more than a month. I believe we were successful with the contractor. I think we negotiated unit prices that were fair and reasonable to the town as well as the contractor. And so the bottom line was there were a dozen items. About 5 of those 12 items really represent 80% of the $422,000 overrun. And
What were the items? What were the items that overran?
well, the significant ones were unclassified excavation and disposal, structure excavation, material for stream bed establishment, and the 2 trenchless installations. That is a construction technique to install a utility pipe through the ground and underneath the culvert at a depth of about 22 feet. So those 5 items basically represent 80% of the $422,000 that are required to complete the project.
Were they in your bid document?
Yes.
Pete, could you just elaborate a little on the methodology that DOT uses on major and minor items and how that plays into some of the other bidders in the contract?
Yes, the specification is clear in section 109 about whether an item of work is a major item or a minor item. And it's based on what the total cost of the project and how you apply a certain percentage to the respective items that are in the project. In our case, any item that was bid by our contractor where the total cost was a little more than $43,000, that becomes a major item. Anything that's less than that, again, the total for that particular item, the quantity times the unit price bid by the contractor, if it's less than $43,000, then it becomes a minor item. When it's a major item, there are rules governing a major item. When it's a major item, the first 25% of the overrun is covered by the current unit price. When it's a minor item, the first 100%, or you could double the quantity before you negotiate a price, with the contractor.
Okay.
So if in our particular case, the minor items, if the item was 100 cubic yards, and let's say the final quantity was 250, well, the first 100 is bound by the current unit price, and the remaining 50 is what is negotiated. And then in section 109, they give you ways to negotiate with a contractor. When I looked at those ways, one of them is, let's take the average of the 3 lowest bids by the contractors that bid our project. And basically 9 out of those items, we use that methodology. And what's good about it is all of the portions that needed of the quantity overruns that needed to be negotiated were less. The unit price was less than what the contractor bid. So that's how you handle major and minor items in a summary. Other things that we also utilize, there's a vehicle called the weighted average bid prices in New York State DOT. DOT tracks all these projects, and on 2 of the items, which was the trenchless installation, I felt it was best to go that route. And again, the number that we were able to negotiate, that number represented the unit price that was less than the contract. And the final item, which was a sheet applied waterproofing membrane, I didn't like either of the other options. And what I did, I said, let's negotiate a unit price. And that's what we did.
Wow. A lot of money.
Look, this is a road job, a culvert job. Is it unusual to have 14% increase on a project? Basically, no, it's not. It is somewhat unusual that, unfortunately, our engineer's estimate was the problem. It wasn't as though we have to do extra work here, we have to extend the limits here, bring all these things in. The most contributing factor were the miscalculations that were made, by the engineer.
By what engineer?
WSP.
Yeah, through our office. I mean, there were a few items, and and I could give some examples if you'd like, but just a section got missed in a calculation. So the total sum of the quantity that was presented in the contract plans was significantly less than what was described in the drawings. It was just a mathematical, it got missed.
Can I say something here? Initial contract, you always have some maybe 10% plus or something like that, and this is on top of that 10% on your estimate, this $400,000?
Yes, well, they didn't give us 10%, they gave us 4%. It was $120,000. So yes, this $422,000 is above the $120,000 that was
included in the contract.
Okay.
And I will say that the majority of that $122,000 we needed for additional work that was related to utilities that were the requirements of Westchester County Department of Health.
Was that at
Veterans Road, wasn't it?
Veterans Road, right?
Hill Boulevard, probably.
Hill
right,
Boulevard.
Most of it was in Hill, Matt, but yes, we had to do the meter, monitoring pits for the water main on both sides of the culvert. That was about $30,000 of work too. So.
And then you had the issues with the Department of Health and the sewer line up on Hill, correct?
Also true.
Yes. The sewer line, we had to build the reinforced concrete chambers, and that was $50,000. Yeah.
And so that came out of the contingency.
That will come out of the contingency. Yes, he hasn't been paid for any of this stuff yet either.
Right. So then it's in reality, then with the contingency intact, you're really talking that you're over $542,000.
That's correct.
Right.
Some of it was the traditional additional work, as we described, in terms of the features that we had to take care of.
Okay.
All righty.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan, anything you want to add?
No, I think it's pretty well covered, so I feel the board's up to speed now on how we got to where we are, and our contract amount has to be increased to pay for these extra expenses in the construction contract.
And I'd like to just interject that our contractor hasn't been paid for any of these overruns, and most of the items are completed. So he has cooperated, pursued the project. Like I said, we're going to be done in about 6 weeks. I have to submit change orders, for the funding that we are requesting. That documentation obviously goes to the town, but it also has to go to New York State DOT. They have to review it, and doesn't cost. It's no money out of their pocket, but the process is that New York State DOT representative, he has to review it and approve it.
I mean, is there any hope of the DOT increasing our grant amount?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's pretty well prescribed in the Bridge New York program. Like, it's capped at this amount. If there are some, I mean, it is capped at a total amount. So if there are certain, how it's divided into phases, the right-of-way phase, the design phase, all of this money is included in one grant. So if there's money left over in a previous phase, DOT will move it into a construction phase for you. There is that. But as far as adding to the total capped amount, I don't think there's a mechanism through Bridge New York to do that.
So, and just for clarification, so the original amount was established in advance of bidding it. So that
yes, far in advance, like before even any concepts had come about. So
Okay.
that part was
So that
years
was
and
the
years ago.
3.3 million.
Right, and that's the two projects combined. It was capped 95, 5%, 95 Fed, 5% local share, capped at 2.6 million for Hill Boulevard, and 100% state share capped at 820,000 at Veterans Road, and that includes design, right-of-way, construction inspection, and construction costs. Which that estimate was made in 2011 or something, a very long time ago.
So I'm just trying to get at, what's the bottom line on our exposure above and beyond what the grant will cover? Because I think that's probably a bottom line the board would like to hear.
Let's see, and I can probably, I think I have and I can send that to you, Dan, tomorrow. I have that value somewhere because the funding amounts per phase are given in the IPP, the initial project proposal. I think that's what it stands for. So I can pull that out and put together our costs through the project timeline, and you'll see, and I'll add the overruns, and you'll see what the overall overage is at the end.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful to know.
Sure.
I'll also add, Matt, that if anyone else from the board has other questions down the line, Nicole and I are very free and open, to answer those questions.
Yeah, and Dan and so does Matt, probably has our contact information.
Yep.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Okay, Dan, you want to move on to fluoride? Or is there anything else here that we need to
No,
cover?
I think the board's up to speed on this. So I thank the WSP team for telling the story and showing us where we're at. Thank you.
Right, and I'll send you that spreadsheet tomorrow.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Thank you, and nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Dan.
So next up is fluoride, and we've got Vanessa McPherson from Arcadis joining us for that. She did a little PowerPoint there. What do you think, Vanessa? Do you want to just go right to that and tell the story with your PowerPoint?
I can. Am I going to be able to share screen?
Yeah,
Is that
you're able to share.
Okay. So let me go ahead and do that. And just what I started with here on the PowerPoint is a quick recap. So I had the opportunity to speak with the board, I guess it was back in December now, about the fluoride project. And it was sort of at the last major crossroads that we were at here for the fluoride. So I wanted to start with just some photos here, and I can zoom in on them on the PowerPoint, just so you can see a before and after of the building. So when we talked last time, this is what the building looked like, and the approval of the change orders that were authorized by the board to rehabilitate the structure resulted in it looking like this, which looks awesome. It's still a work in progress, but it looks a lot better. So that funding for masonry and the roof enhancements really went a long way to making this building kind of a gem, I think, in the neighborhood versus the eyesore that it was before. So there's some definite good news there. And other items that we've completed since the last time that I had the opportunity to speak to the board, obviously masonry siding and roof, which we just looked at the photos of. We've been doing ongoing coordination with Con Ed for the utility. There's been some back and forth there on how Con Ed wanted to approach getting the new service to the building. We've completed the low pressure force main extension. This facility didn't have a sanitary discharge. It was all just going into the storm system. So we've separated that so that any facility drainage would be going into a low pressure force main in the area of the facility. And the electrical contractor has been working on conduit and wire inside the building. Some other good news is that the town did secure a grant extension. That was our big fear the last time we talked. So the grant was extended, which is fantastic. and I think to echo some of the prior project successes, right? I think the collaboration here between all the town departments, engineering, the board, Ken and the water department, I mean, we wouldn't be even close to where we are now without all the hard work that has gone into it from the town. So I'm just grateful to have the support as we work through this, and we wouldn't be even close to where we are without all of that support. So the developments on the project, which is what Dan asked me to join here tonight and talk to the board about, are some undocumented conditions of the piping, substantial size piping in Old Crampon Road where the facility is. So the facility is at the top side of the sheet. This is probably really hard to read, so I apologize for that, but I'll try to use my mouse if you can see it to highlight some of the differences. But the record drawings that we were provided with during the design phase basically showed the 24-inch transmission main. This is the major artery that supplies water and connects the two water treatment plants, directly connected to the facility through two existing lines. That the intent was to really harness that existing infrastructure and piping to avoid doing any excavation, and run our tubing for a sample line and the chemical injection line here on the 24-inch pipe. When we went to do this work, what we realized is there's actually a lot more piping in Old Crampon Road than I think anyone realized was there. And most significantly is a connection between the 24-inch pipe and the distribution system on the other side of the roadway, which threw a wrench in our plan because that connection would be somewhere around here, which meant that we couldn't inject here and sample here if there was a point in between where there would be a draw off of water.
Sure.
So that's really, I think, Dan, is there anything else we should highlight here in terms of the discrepancies between what was there and what we thought was there before I move on to some of the costs?
We also ran into that T that nobody knew was there, and that interfered with, and ultimately that's why we couldn't set that other doghouse manhole.
I think there was another, well, there were a couple more things.
There's a lot of surprises.
There were a lot of surprises. The 24-inch actually is not straight and level in elevation as we had thought because of these interconnections between the facility, the 24, and distribution. The 24-inch main actually dives down to go underneath this pipe, so it was much deeper than we thought it was. And there was also another T. So back to that collaboration, I think we had multiple calls to figure out the best way to handle this and minimize any cost impact. And what the team arrived at was relocating the injection manhole to a point much further upstream than originally thought, reusing this manhole that's shown on the contract sheets, but this manhole on the sketch, which had an existing air release valve in it, which was made known by Northern Westchester Joint Waterworks to the town was actually no longer needed. So we were able to remove that air release valve and reuse the corporation for our sample. So we're reusing this manhole. So we have a new plan, and actually the contractor is prepared to proceed. This manhole is installed, and we're going to be tapping the pipe tomorrow. So we're kind of back on track here. But there are some costs. I think in the frenzy of trying to figure out exactly what all the piping was and how to move on from this, ELQ, our contractor, did assist the town on a time and materials basis to help with locating the water main. And we ran into some similar issues with trying to locate the low pressure force main where we were going to make the tie-in. So those are the most, I think, significant costs. Some collateral damage was not being able to route all of the tubing for the new sample and injection through the existing piping now that we're moving manholes around. So there was another cost, this $14,000 cost, to come up with a plan to be able to basically put in a junction box close to the 12-inch pipe and run conduit from each of these manholes to that junction box to use the 12-inch. So we tried to salvage that plan as much as possible. But there is some additional cost there. The last item is a cost. When Dan came on board on the project, what he realized is there was an opportunity to potentially use the low pressure force main piping that we're running all the way down Garden Lane for beneficial future use for other residences in the area who may want to connect. So that I think is being reviewed by the health department to make sure that that's a go, but we asked ELQ for a price to put in some additional valving in the event that that's approved so that the connection would be seamless in the future. Sorry, go ahead.
So the total is 45 on 724?
That's correct.
Okay.
I have two questions. Shutting down the large pipe, from both hands has to be shut down, and this is the additional cost.
No, the additional cost is really ELQ mobilizing their crew to help with test pit excavations in Old Crampon Road to actually locate the pipe physically in the field when we realized that the record drawings that we had did not match the actual installed condition of the pipe. So there's no cost here for, doing valve closures or isolating the pipe or any of the work that would be contract work. It's really just the manpower associated with ELQ assisting for the pipe locations. And you'll note it was about the same number of days. I think for the water main, it was 5 total days of work. Right. And for the force main, it was 4. But there are credits that are embedded in this cost estimate for work that they no longer need to do, right? We're now reusing a manhole where they had to install a new one. So the detailed PCO breakdown, which we received, has pluses and minuses for the kind of ultimate result of this pipe.
And another question, the original building whatever need to be done and what is being done to meet the code is very big difference, isn't it? How much was the difference in the money?
So the prior change order that was authorized by the board was a total of $55,000, and that included the $30,000 miscellaneous work allowance that was embedded in the contract. So what we're looking at now would be another 45.
Is there any way I can show you my pictures? What was the original in Joint Waterworks?
That's not going to help her.
Huh? You cannot, right?
I can try to see it. I can't really. It's hard. Is that in that Hazen and Sawyer report from 2016 of the fluoride at Catskill?
Yeah.
I've seen those photos.
You've not seen me representing. I'm the expert on the fluorine. I can tell you that I have worked with the fluorine chemistry more than 55 years, okay?
Yeah. Vanessa, a quick question for you. So all this work that for the 45, 724, was this work completed?
No, the only work that's been completed is the time and materials work that was tracked for the utility locating. The routing of injection and sample tubing, the $14,000 line item and the $2,700 line item have not been completed.
So basically this is work because what we found underground differed from the drawings you were presented with.
That's correct.
Okay.
Light is it at the end of the tunnel or tunnel is the end of the light?
It's a project that just keeps on going. Dan, any thoughts on this?
Well, it's just, unfortunate. I guess I could use this as a pitch for keeping our GIS up to date, because we'll capture all this information now so that 20 years from now, somebody doesn't have to go through the same thing we just went through.
Yeah.
It's real important to memorialize this kind of information. Couple other things which Vanessa didn't touch on her slide. Originally we thought we just had to cap the the suction pipe in the Catskill Aqueduct. But based upon a meeting we had, I guess it was last week, the DEP now wants us to remove it entirely. Another thing that sort of falls into that category is the three-phase transformer that sits in the right-of-way or in the Catskill Aqueduct right-of-way. We could have ELQ do it. I guess really none of that's in their scope of work, right, Vanessa? So this would be something. Oh yeah, you can see the transformer in that picture. Thank you. It sits in the back in the woods. You have to come off of the trail off of Field Street over there. But the point being is we don't have to have ELQ do that work. So if we could do some of that work with our own people, we could, try and not spend any more out-of-pocket expense and just do it with our own forces, if that's something we can do. So if the board's comfortable with that and we can, maybe highway or water department help out to complete those tasks, it would save us some money.
Is that transformer now not being used? Is that what I'm to understand?
Yeah, no, it's completely disconnected. The original plan, I guess, was to feed the facility with the old three-phase power that came in off of this pole line out on the aqueduct and in through that transformer. But that ended up being a whole other situation where I think Con Ed wanted like $30,000 to re-energize that system. So we're now moving to feeding the facility off the pole, which is another subplot to all this that we've been trying to lobby Con Ed now because they have to replace a transformer. We have to have the transformer that's on the pole at the corner changed over to a three-phase transformer. So that's kind of right now is one of our issues is that we don't have power yet in the facility.
And
Yeah.
with this
I'm sorry.
that's all right. With this transformer, Dan, what do we do with it once, let's say, we remove it?
Okay, Con Ed will pick it up.
Oh, they will pick it up.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
'cause
we
I know-
don't have the actual disposal cost. They'll take it back.
Yeah, because I know there's quite a disposal process with that because usually those old ones are filled with all sorts of stuff that have PCBs and all that other kind of.
Dan, the last two requirements from DEP, are those new requirements?
I'll let Vanessa take that one since she's got more history on this than I do.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. They're not. So it's part of the town of Yorktown has a land use permit from the New York City DEP for this facility on the aqueduct property. And in a condition of the land use permit when they provided it for the fluoride facility upgrade, was that at some point in the future, the town would look to remove any outdated infrastructure that was no longer in use on the property. And until that time, they would charge a nominal fee for like leasing the land for that space. So I think the fee for something like the transformer is like $50 a year. So as soon as the transformer is removed, that comes off the land use permit. But there was no commitment or obligation about doing that now under this project. And we actually, Dan and I had that conversation with DEP when they were on site about our priority really being getting the fluoride system commissioned at this point, and that being something that we absolutely have to do. And if we can work in this other stuff sooner, that's great. But if we can't, we really need to focus on getting fluoride up and running and satisfy the condition of the grant to
Sure.
The pipe has to be taken out, right? From aqueduct to the fluoridation. Okay, so that can be done in-house or something small.
And actually, I mentioned it here on this slide and forgot to talk about it, but the board, in part of that change order 1 that we discussed back in December, the board did authorize the capping of the suction piping on the two sides. So the ELQ did one side of it, the side closest to the building, when they replaced all the masonry because they were excavating down. So it made sense to do then. So they've charged for half of that cost, which was a $14,000 line item. If we decide that we don't want them to move forward with capping now that DEP is requesting a full removal of that pipe, we could take a credit back of about $7,200 for work that ELQ would not need to perform that could offset these costs that we're looking at here on the screen.
Another reason was the security and safety, is because of, the crazy world going on, you never know what can happen, the pipe, something can, be vandalized or some kind of a criminal thing happens, so this was a good decision, to be closed up and remove the pipe whenever we have to.
No, I agree, Vishnu. I think that since we're there, we need to finish.
Vanessa, how long do you think until the project's fully completed?
So I think it's really critical to give ELQ direction on what we want to do with the sample and injection tubing, so that they can run all of that piping and we can start commissioning of the fluoride system. The skid pump is on site, the control panel is on site. The other critical path is Con Ed bringing us power, right? Until we have power, we can't get Verizon in to give us our new FiOS for communications. So to me, those are the two most critical items, is giving ELQ the direction that they need to finish any of the buried utility work, and the Con Ed piece. And Dan and I have been discussing that. I think Dan had a really great idea about Con Ed potentially just giving us a temporary service if they can't.
I talked to Muldoon today. That ain't
He
gonna
said
work
no.
out.
Okay.
That's a good idea, but we got to just stay
how much
on
time is that
track for the 3-phase.
Did he give a sense of timing?
No, but he gave me somebody else I should contact at this point to try and expedite this.
Did he give you a time frame at all?
No.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
They haven't even responded to my emails, which is why I was grateful that Dan was willing to intervene. I mean, we met on site with Con Ed on April 20th, and have been asking probably weekly since that meeting when we locked in the approach for the new service, what their timing would be. So that's been a frustration, but the ELQ is committed to completing this as expeditiously as possible.
Dan, we have to circle back tomorrow with Con Ed. We'll call the folks that we're in contact with pretty regularly, and they've been responding quite nicely. So why don't you and I have a conversation first thing tomorrow morning and make sure this is on their radar, since this has been taking way too long for them to respond and provide service for.
Actually, the other related item to this is we're gonna have to do some tree clearing because now we're feeding it overhead. So again, Vanessa, we didn't get a price from ELQ to do the clearing, right? So that would be another place we could save a couple of bucks if we could do that with our own forces.
Let me ask something else, now this will be the responsibility of the water department or who? Because, if any risk generated, you just don't go with the garbage container and fill it in, you require a special, training to handle the chlorine, waste, chlorine containing waste. So are you going to tell them how to do it, to train, or who will be responsible for that?
We always did this before.
And I can jump in here. So the actual operation and maintenance of this facility would be by Northern Westchester Joint Waterworks as part of the town's agreement. So Ken and his staff would not be responsible for offloading chemicals or swapping out totes or anything like that. That would all be done by Northern Westchester.
Okay. So according to the old contract, whatever they had it before. Okay.
So Dan, are you prepared to give Vanessa instructions for ELQ?
Well, I mean, some of this work we had to do, otherwise the job was just going to stop cold, and it was just going to give the contractor more reason to hit us on delays and so forth. So the two items on your list, the last two items, I guess haven't happened yet, right, Vanessa?
Correct.
So it'd probably be cleaner if now we had the board authorize all
Okay.
that work. And maybe at our next meeting, we could, Vanessa and I could try and just work on, some of this other stuff. We could talk about what the town can and can't do and sort of authorize ELQ to proceed with the modification to the tubing alignment and the additional valving to facilitate other connections to the system.
But in the meantime, they still have work that they're doing.
Well, they've actually been off now for a little bit. So tomorrow, the electrician's been working, but tomorrow ELQ will be back on site doing some of the utility work.
Okay. All right. You'll do the resolution for next week?
Yes.
Okay.
And just work with Pat so this way we know where the money's going to come from. Obviously, we're going to have to work with Kenny as well, since it's going to come out of his budget. But I mean, I just don't think, we're so close to the finish line. I don't think we have much of a choice here.
No, we don't.
Right.
I will also just throw out, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but we've been talking a lot about the American Rescue Plan funding, which is for water, sewer, and broadband. I don't know if there's any opportunity to leverage some of that funding for this project, but I figured I would just toss that thought out there.
No, I appreciate it. There could be, but we still are waiting guidance. I think we got our first memo today about it, but it wasn't very helpful. So we're still waiting for guidance on how to apply, which is something new for us that we're going to have to do. So our finance team is working through that already.
Okay, and we have a funding team also at Arcata, so if there's any questions that we can help answer, please feel free to contact me.
Appreciate that.
You can come back without bad news sometimes, Vanessa. You can come back with good news.
I would love to. I can't tell you how much I was dreading calling in today with more bad news, but I appreciate everyone's understanding as we work through this.
How much money has been reimbursed so far? Because, as you finish something, you submitted the expense. Does anybody know how much is already received from the state?
I think, I don't know if anyone knows off the top of their head. We looked at this number last week with Pat and Ken, and I want to say it was in the $500,000 range that's been reimbursed to the date. That's a rough estimate. I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but that's the number that's rattling around in my head.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa.
My pleasure.
Vanessa,
have a good evening.
Before you leave, do we need a motion for Vanessa in any shape or form, or we're just going to have the resolution on next week? Is that good enough for you, Vanessa?
That works for me. Yep.
So this way we don't lose time.
And I think we have a progress meeting scheduled for Tuesday afternoon next week. So I don't know if at that point, we would want to give ELQ maybe a verbal or tell them that it's coming or.
I think you can give them a verbal that it's coming. I mean, I don't think we need to mess around with this. So, it is what it is at this point.
Agreed. Okay, I can go ahead and proceed with that.
Great.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Vanessa. Appreciate it.
Okay, that ends the presentations. We will go over to resolutions. We'll start. We have some resolutions that came out of close from personnel. We will start with those. Resolved that effective June 28th, 2021, Police Officer Michael Caprio is hereby assigned at the discretion of the Chief of Police as detective in the Yorktown Police Department at an annual salary of $125,552. Next, be it resolved that Kim A. Hughes of Yorktown Heights, New York is hereby appointed as an intermediate clerk, job class code 0187-01 from eligible list number 02-100, effective date June 14th, 2021 in the Town Clerk Department, to be paid from Yorktown CSCA Salary Schedule A-1 Group 3 Step 1, which is $42,177 annually. Be it further resolved that this appointment is subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 nor more than 52 weeks commencing on the first date of appointment on June 14th, 2021. Lastly, be it resolved that Brianna Margie of Yorktown Heights, New York is hereby appointed temporary intermediate clerk, job class code 0187-02, effective April 22nd, 2021, to be paid from Yorktown CSCA Salary Schedule A1 Group 3 Step 1, which is $42,177 annually. We have a motion for the personnel resolutions.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and we will continue with the resolutions on the agenda. Authorize appointment of William P. Harrington of Bleakley, Platt, and Schmidt as special counsel. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, I'll start. Vishnu, go ahead. Do what you do.
Let me say something, This is not nothing new, okay? We spend the money, $5,000 for the ethics, things and all that. And there are experts in the town and all these things, Why don't we just gather all the information, and our town attorney is really good, he can guide us how we can, and if we are not satisfied, we can have somebody else. So, this is not going to be just 1, 2, 3. We heard last time in the closed session, there will be everything done.
Well, I think that we have a responsibility not just to deal with the immediate issue, but the broader issues that we are all aware of, which is enhancing the ethics code, something that we've heard about, something that I think we all know, something I think that many involved in town government agree needs to be enhanced. So this is not just a one focused item, and this provides us with also an independent view and assessment on the current ethics code, and also provides us hopefully with some recommendations for us to enhance the ethics code to make sure that we don't have similar issues like we are dealing with right now in the future.
See, there's a lot of what you just said about enhancing the ethics code. Totally agree on. Because it should have been done years ago.
May I say something here?
I'm not finished.
Okay. No, when you're done.
The idea that I agree on the principle that somebody disclosed information that they were not supposed to disclose. Mm-hmm. My only question is, do you really think we're going to find out who did it?
Honestly, I don't. But that's why it's not just about that one incident.
Okay, you're saying that for the greater good. Okay.
It has to be, because either we're going to continue to turn a blind eye toward what happened and continue to turn a blind eye to an ethics code that clearly just isn't working. I think we've got several examples of that over the last several years.
Well, I agree with you.
Right, or we can finally fix it. And I think the way that we can do that and finally take a proactive, well, it's really reactive, but a positive step forward is by taking this step, and then hopefully the goal for Mr. Harrington is to provide feedback to the board. If he's able to figure out what happened from from an individual standpoint, but also from a process standpoint, I think it's important to have him review the process by which these things are communicated between the ethics board and the town board to make sure that there's no gaps in that, but also taking a look at the ethics code as a whole in order to provide feedback and recommendations so we can enhance it and make sure, again.
Yeah, I think you're leaving out one of the most important parts of and I don't know if it's Mr. Harrington or Adam. Mm-hmm. It is having people listen to, whether it's the town attorney or Mr. Harrington, to understand what this means, what you can and cannot do. There's a lot of, a lot of people say, well, I didn't know about that. And I know one of the things we talked about was that when we hire people, everybody should be presented with the code. But beyond that, I think it is wordy. You've seen it. It's wordy.
Oh, yeah.
And it needs not to be so wordy that people can't understand it.
I agree. I think it can be cleaned up and be much more direct in what it wants us to do and wants other town officials to do, and
Correct.
how it also manages the process by which people can have confidence that when they go to the ethics board to either get a ruling or to report something, that process is being managed the right way, and that we don't have a situation like we have now where someone did something, frankly, that they shouldn't have.
Well, in the last two decisions, I remember having to saying, "I'm sorry, I don't understand this. Can someone come and talk to us?"
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah, right. I agree with you, Councilwoman, 100%.
I want to go to Vishnu.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Patel?
On a September 24th, September 24th to 30, 2019, you have made a comment here. And Matt Slater, candidate for the supervisor, said that ethic code needs to be revamped, adding the public deserves to know it comes to an elected official. This was your statement, and nothing is done. So may I say something else? Previously, like 10 years ago, some of the bomb bombers said there'll be some innuendo. Supervisor said, "Oh, nobody wanted to bring in any ethics standard, So, and it is half the people don't even fill up the form, So these are the issue we are facing, the entire board, then and now,
Well, I stand by what I said then.
Yeah.
I still believe it today. I'm not backing down from that 1 second. But to your point, I was with a volunteer board last week, and I said, "Hey, did everyone, just as a reminder, your ethics forms were due last week?" And you got a lot of strange looks, like people didn't know. And
come on, Diana mails it out to everybody. Come on.
I know she did. I'm not trying to cast a dispersion against our town clerk. I know she handled that the way she was supposed to. But we have volunteers who don't recognize that they have an obligation to put it back, to return it, to fill it out properly and return it. So all those things need to be looked at, I think, so that we can enhance it, so that we can make sure it's done properly, and also so that when people go to the ethics board, there's confidence in that process. I think that we've lost. I think that confidence has been eroded completely, not just from this one incident, but from several of the past incidents as well. So I think we need to restore that confidence, and I think the right way to do it is to bring in someone from the outside who has experience in this and who can look at it and provide a real perspective and real advice and guidance for the town board to make the right changes to enhance the ethics code.
But
would he come in? Because we'd like to talk with him.
Go ahead.
Yes, Councilwoman. He honestly, he was in. The board interviewed him last week.
Darn it. That's okay.
I know, but we'll bring. I'm happy to bring.
I do not. Nope. It's okay. We can talk later.
Yep.
If I may.
Yep.
I think this is something that we need to do. There has been at least 3 incidents since I've sat on this town board that we had investigations on, etc. This ethics code isn't working, or it's not understood. I don't know which. And to expend this money to possibly pinpoint where we have some type of a leak, that things shouldn't be getting out until they're properly vetted by this town board, I think is mandatory. It's not just needed, it's mandatory.
Okay.
Because there's a leak here, and we need to find out where it is. Do I think we're going to find it? I agree with you, Matt. Probably not. But it's going to show that we aren't taking a weak stance in the way we feel about the ethics of our elected officials, volunteer people, or employees.
Well, and I think the residents have to know that we don't take this lightly. You're right, Tommy.
100%. And
right.
I go back to they need to have confidence in the system.
What's that? I'm sorry, man.
I said I don't know if I'm breaking up here, but I said that I think the residents also we have to restore that confidence in the system, in the process.
Yep.
Because right now, honestly, I'll say it. It's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing how these things are unfolding, and it's not right. And
may I just say something? There are other thing happen in the past, they might come back to hunt us too. Okay, it's not only that. It's not just only one thing. So all these things, we can work together and do whatever you have to do.
And that's what I hope we do here.
I
is
think
work together.
that's really what we need to do. It's working.
Let me just say this thing. The people can go in your computer, in your bank account and steal the money. They were taken out $950 twice in my Chase Bank. I shut that thing off. Okay, somebody withdraw the money from my account in a casino in England. I have not been in England in 25 years. Okay, so the whole thing is so bogus. I do not trust. Use only cash. Cash is king. Okay, check costs more money. You give it around to somebody, they copy and they send somebody. The whole thing is a crooked world. I tell you, really. I don't know. The trust is the problem.
Yes.
With that being said, if there's no other discussion, then we'll make a motion.
Motion.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the Water Department, to authorize the Yorktown Consolidated Water District to commence with the cleaning and relining of the cast iron water mains in priority areas. This is going to allow us to move forward with the water cement relining project, which is something that we've been trying to get off the ground. And with this resolution, we believe that we will be well on our way to beginning this project later in the late summer and early fall.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, a resolution to authorize a traffic study by Sam Schwartz Engineering DPC for the Taco Bell restaurant in the Route 6 office development at Route 6 and Mohegan Avenue in Mohegan Lake. This is exactly why we hired the Schwartz Engineering Group to review the traffic plans for applications that are being proposed. Obviously, we know that there's been, if you've been following the planning board proceedings, this particular item has been a bit contentious. And so thankfully, we have now the Sam Schwartz Group to review the traffic plan as an independent voice to make sure that the town's interests are protected. And so this...
And may I say something? Who will pay for this one?
The applicant does. If you on the bottom, I'll read it. Be it resolved, the supervisor of the town of Yorktown is hereby authorized to engage Sam Schwartz Engineering DPC under the on-call agreement with the town of Yorktown for the purpose of analyzing the traffic impacts of the commercial site plan known as Taco Bell Restaurant located on the Route 6 office development in an amount not to exceed $5,000 for the traffic analysis, and that the total cost shall be paid for by the applicant as part of the cost of the application's review. This is exactly why we hired them.
Motion.
So another question, may I ask you? If anything else develop tomorrow next door or, in the same corridor, do they have to go? This is really the study will be whatever is done for the taco will be another business. It'll be the same traffic study or they have to do it again?
It depends on the application. But in this case, the applicant is using a traffic study that was, I believe, completed in, if I remember correctly, Ed 2018. And so the Sam Schwartz Group will now review that traffic study to make sure that it meets the standards that we want here in Yorktown, to make sure that the planning board has the correct information.
Because, when you come where there is hot dog trucks near the winery something, and you go to Lexington Avenue, there is the accident. I waiting for 1 hour and 20 minutes just to go there, just to go through that,
Yeah.
And I'm usually never late, but, if something medical emergency, something, everything was shut down, and you got to go to Lexington and go back all the way to the hospital area like that,
Yeah, that corridor, as we know, can get, if there's an accident, does get backed up. But this is specific for the site plan approval process for Taco Bell. And so this, again, as it says, will be paid for by the applicant. This is part of the process now that we're instituting here to make sure that these traffic studies are reviewed properly by an independent set of eyes. So we had, I believe, Diana, we had a motion and a second. Yes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. From the Finance Department, I'm very excited for this one. To authorize the comptroller to process the following budget transfer for the Mohegan Highland Park District. This budget transfer is going to help repair their dock, which we've been trying to do for, I believe, close to 2 years now. And it will also help with some plumbing updates down at their beach.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great. Another very exciting resolution.
Yay.
Our last, and I want to congratulate our town clerk, Diana Quast, who's been working very hard on this. But this is a grant that authorizes the town supervisor to execute a contract with the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York. This is in regards to the State and Municipal Facilities Grant number 19273 for the construction of an inclusive playground at the Granite Knolls Recreation and Sports Complex in the amount of $250,000. And so we have received the paperwork and the GDA grant disbursement agreement from the State of New York, and we've been waiting a long time for this, so it's finally here.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hope not. Motion carries. Excellent. And with that, I'm just checking one more time, but I believe we covered all the resolutions. Is there any other business before the board?
Matt, do you think it's proper for us to go into a small closed session with regard to litigation with the two applicants, or not applicants, but two people that we had on tonight with regard to the construction projects?
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, if you want to discuss.
Yeah, we need to have a discussion on that particular stuff, contractual stuff and so on.
All right, so then we will go back into executive session, and then we will adjourn our meeting from there.
So moved.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Yorktown. Have a great night.
Night.